Hey guys, today we're doing a little bit of a different episode. We're doing an oil analysis after a race weekend, so stay tuned for the results. So like I said, today's episode is a little different. We're going handheld in the garage because it's raining outside. So right now it is Wednesday. It is before the race weekend at Houston. And I have drained the oil out of my SV650 and taken the filter off. So we are going to fill it back up and make sure we got some good clean oil in there. We're using Suzuki's oil and a Suzuki filter. I always use the Suzuki filters, but honestly I usually use the SuperTech oil. If you ask 10 different people questions about oil, you're gonna get 10 different answers. So I won't pretend like I know everything, but if you watch the Project Farm video, I'll put a link in the description and see if I can figure out how to make it pop up here. Project Farm did an oil analysis and found that there are some cheap oil manufacturers that are almost as good or better than the expensive like Mobil 1 and Castrol and stuff. So that's my reasoning. Again, ask 10 different people, get 10 different answers. But today, since we're sending oil out for analysis, I figured let's go ahead and do the good Suzuki oil. All right, so let's go ahead and fill it up with this Suzuki X-Star oil. So we're right at the full mark, so let's go ahead and safety wire this fill plug, and then we're sealed up and ready for the race weekend. So I'm gonna do Friday practice, Saturday practice and 1 race, and then Sunday practice and 3 races. So I would say it's a similar amount of wear to doing 2 track days. So we're gonna analyze the oil, how much life it has left in it. All right, let's open this up. Let's see, there's a bag, looks like some oil absorbing towel, and oh boy, there's more in here than I was expecting. Okay, so it basically says warm up your vehicle before you take the sample of oil. Sample in middle of the drain stream, so take the plug out, let it drain for a second, take your sample and let it finish draining. And I have the sample bottle ready here. Okay, so let it drain and let's take the sample. Right, there we go. All right, here's our sample. All right, so here is the contents that were sent to me, minus the Sharpie. So let's fill this out. Obviously not gonna show you my address and stuff like that. Okay, here's the back of the card. I put my payment info and email address and stuff in, so I covered that up. But I just kind of explained that it's a race bike. I run it at high RPMs, high stress. It's got a slipper clutch, so I'm sure that all destroys the oil. All right, we finally got the oil results back. Pardon the mess and the crazy spot in the basement we're filming in, but that's anyway, nobody cares, but doing work on the house in the basement. So let's go through this. There are comments above this, but for now I just want to show you some of what they said here. So nothing in this section sticks out as being really bad except for the lead, which we'll talk about in a second. But aluminum 9 parts per million. That's the units here, is parts per million. And over here on the right side, this is kind of like the what you should expect under normal conditions. So 9 parts per million, average is 14, so that's really good. Chrome is 1, average of 1. Iron is 8, average of 20, so that's good. Copper is 1, average of 6, really good. The lead is higher, so you normally expect to see 2 parts per million of lead, and the my bike has 6, which I found really fascinating. I don't know exactly why that is. They talk about it in the comments up here, so I'll show you that. Lead is elevated, which represents more bearing wear than is average. So I told them I had 3 hours of hard stress from racing, and so they say that could be the cause, in which case it's not particularly abnormal. They say to send more samples in, is how I interpret that. I don't know if I will, but we'll see. Other metals look fine based on other bikes that have 2,400 mile oil intervals, and the low viscosity is okay. We'll talk about that in a sec, and the TBN, we'll talk about that in a sec, but just wanted to show you what they said about the lead. So lead is, yeah, we went over that, 6 parts per million. Tin 0, molybdenum 9, nickel 1, magnesium, silver none, titanium 26. I don't know where there's titanium in my engine. I was trying to think about that. It has a slipper clutch. That's the only internal engine piece that I know of that's aftermarket, and I don't think that has any titanium in it, so I really don't know where that came from. I would assume the stock SV650 doesn't have any titanium in it, and they say obviously most engines that they test have 0 titanium, so I'm not sure. Anyway, potassium 0 parts per million, average of 2. Boron is 8, so really low. Silicone 17, regular is 12, so a little higher, nothing too bad to worry about. Sodium 3, average is 7. Calcium 1834, average is 1830, so basically the same. A little low on magnesium, about the same phosphorus, about the same zinc, a little bit low. I don't even know what barium is, but there's none of it here and none of it in the average. So yeah, nothing really to worry about. The only things I'm curious about are the lead, which they seem to think is bearing wear, and the titanium, which I have no idea where that came from, but I will think about that and investigate that. So then here are the properties of the oil, and I found this fascinating. I'm not sure what these units are, viscosity units, but it seems like at 210 degrees Fahrenheit, so the viscosity is right where it should be, a little low, a little thinner, and they talk about that up here. The low viscosity is okay. I think that's just kind of normal. These racing oils are pretty thin because the engines are going to be running hot, you know, all the time, so they run thin is my guess. Same thing, the viscosity, I don't know if these are just different units. I don't know what this is talking about, but 100 degrees Celsius is basically 210 Fahrenheit, so that's the same temperature, so these must be just different units that they're using. Flash point, so that'll tell you if there's gas in your oil. If there's a significant amount of gas, the flash point will lower. And so in hindsight, I wish I had sent a sample of brand new oil in with this so I could compare the new versus the used, and I thought about doing that but decided not to. In hindsight, I wish I would have, but I didn't do that. So flash point 415, the values should be, they say, should be above 385, and that obviously is. So that's good. There's less than 0.5% fuel, which is good. It should be under 2. Antifreeze 0%. That I'm really glad to see, because I've been having overheating issues with my bike, and I wondered if it was a blown head gasket. So I'm really glad to see that it's 0, because if it even if it's a tiny break in the head gasket, that would show up on the oil analysis. So I'm really glad to see that. And then same thing, water 0. I don't use antifreeze, I use water, so I guess that's the one that really matters. But and then insolubles, that's like carbon. So if that's high, it means that your rings are bad or going bad, because it's letting carbon pass the cylinders down into the oil. And so the fact that it's supposed to be under 0.6 and mine is 0.2 is really promising. The TBN, that's the amount of like anti-wear additives, like they talk about that up here. TBN was strong, but those additives decrease as you run the oil. And so they say TBN was strong, but use a similar interval for best comparison. And so I'm assuming what they're talking about is like, as that gets low, you wear your engine more and more. And so don't run it any longer than that, just to preserve those anti-wear additives and keep your oil in good shape. So that's about it as far as this analysis. There's a PDF that they publish here. Let's make this a little bigger. That they publish here, just a sample. Some of this is funny, but a sample of what some other dude's truck is, but just to see what they say on the report. Let's see, do they talk about? Yeah, so lead can be caused by bearings, leaded gas, fuel additives. Titanium, some intake valves and connecting rods, aftermarket parts, oil additives. So maybe that's in the oil, the Suzuki X-Star oil. I don't know where that would come from, because I don't think the SV has titanium intake valves or connecting rods. Aftermarket parts could be the slipper clutch. Man, I don't know. That is very weird. So anyway, they talk about the other stuff. Yeah, so insolubles are typically free carbon from the oxidation of the oil itself, along with blow-by past the ring. So if you leave your oil in there for a super long time and it gets oxidized, this insolubles number will go up. But that oil was in my bike less than a week, and so it didn't really do anything. So anyway, in conclusion, I don't know that I'm enough of an expert to say, change your oil after X amount of track days or racing. The two things that make me think that you may not want to push it longer is the viscosity. It is pretty low, and as the oil wears, I think it gets lower and lower. If I remember right, I think it gets runnier and runnier as those molecules of oil break down. And so I don't know, I wouldn't want it to get much runnier than that, much less viscous, if it says it should be up there. And then the TBN, that number will keep decreasing and decreasing as you ride. So my guess is, if you really want to cheap out, my guess is you could probably just change your oil at the beginning of the season, after 3 or 4 rounds and then like at the end of the season and just you know, call it good. In my opinion, I think I'll start, I might push it to like 2 race weekends on one oil change, but I really would be hesitant in my opinion to push it past that, because an oil change is cheap. It's, you know, $30 for some full synthetic oil and then $15 for a filter, and I only change my filter every other oil change. And so you're talking, you know, $40 for an oil change versus $1,000 for a new engine for some bikes, you know, 500 plus at least, up to several thousand for a newer bike. So maybe, yeah, I guess maybe on an old bike like mine, an SV650, this is fine to be using for multiple race weekends. But definitely if you have like a newer expensive bike, I would be changing it every other race weekend. But anyway, maybe I'll do this again next season, and I will send in a new sample and a used sample, and I'll send in the SuperTech, the Walmart brand oil, because I'm really curious how that stacks up against this Suzuki oil. So maybe that'll be my my spring project. I'll do another one of these with that oil. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully you learned something. I found this stuff fascinating. I don't know that I'm smart enough to learn too much from it, but it's interesting to see these numbers, see how my bike is wearing. They dug a lot more information out than I thought they would, just based on these numbers of different materials in the oil, and so that was really cool to see. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video as much as I did, but I will plan on seeing you guys in next week's video.